Hey everyone! Recently we created a small demo to explore the integration of Coherence with Ready Player Me, the popular avatar creation platform, using Unity. In short, it's incredibly easy to make the two systems speak with each other, and in this video we're going to explore the demo project, which you can also download from the link in the description below. The project will simply spawn an avatar for the player character on connection, and from that point on, the avatar movement and animations are synchronized with Coherence, while the appearance is powered by Ready Player Me. Let's dive right into the Unity project. When you open the project, everything is contained in a scene called Sample Scene. In Sample Scene, you will notice that there's a Coherence game object which contains a word connection dialog. This comes from the sample UIs that we provide as part of the Coherence package. But we have modified this word connection dialog just a tiny bit to include an avatar field, so that we can insert as the player the avatar ID that the Ready Player Me SDK requires to load the avatar. If you don't know what the avatar ID is, I would suggest to go to the Ready Player Me documentation. They have all the information about it. As I press play, you will in fact see that there's already an avatar ID that gets preloaded in the field. But you can obviously type one yourself. I'm just going to leave this one inside. The other important thing, of course, is like with any Coherence application, we need a word to be running. So what do? Is we go to the Coherence menu here, local replication server, and we click run for words. And this is going to launch a word as a local replication server in our console here. So now we can go back to Unity and we see the local replication server as a world running here in the connection dialog, and we press connect. When we do that, what happens is that the character spawner object here in the scene has spawned an instance of the player prefab which was linked in one of its public fields. And immediately after spawning, it has provided the Ready Player Me server with the ID that we introduced in the UI, which has in turn loaded the actual mesh. And now we can move and walk around, and you can see that the mesh has been completely bound to the bones and animated as we would expect. And if we launch an instance of this game, and we use a different avatar ID, we can connect from this instance, and soon after the avatar will be loaded for ourselves, but also we will see the avatar of the other connected player, which in this case is the editor, which of course also sees the one in the build. So you can see that both clients are connected and seeing each other correctly. And here you see that as this instance of the game has spawned this character here, exactly like the editor did, the character gets synced to the editor world, and a new prefab is instantiated, which of course appears as a remote player. So with this in mind, let's see how it works behind the scenes. The first thing I want to explore is the script that spawns the character. So if we go to the character spawner and we open the script, we will see that we have a public reference to the prefab that we want to spawn. And in the onEnable, what we do is that we ask the Coherence bridge store to get the Coherence bridge which belongs to this scene. And once that's done, we add a listener to the onConnected event. And on that, we will invoke this method called onConnection. So as soon as the player connects, this method gets called. And at that point, the ID of the avatar has already been inserted in the UI, which saves it into this string variable here, which is nothing else than a static string. So all of the logic is in this class called playerDataSetter. But basically the gist of it is that now that string is in this static variable. So from the character spawner, the character spawner is able to provide that value to the newly spawned character prefab. So it spawns the character prefab, instantiate, and then it assigns that property to it. And immediately it invokes a function called load RPM avatar, which we're gonna explore in a second. And finally, it assigns the newly created target to the Cinemachine camera so that the camera can follow it. Now that we saw how the character is spawned, let's see what's inside network character that makes the avatar actually load. The network character mono behavior is on the prefab itself. So if you go to prefabs player, you will notice that this has been assigned to the root of the object. And if we explore the code, we will see that there's public game object property called avatar. This one is basically pointing to the object that we want to swap. And you will notice that in the prefab, this in particular refers to a prefab that comes from the Ready Player Me package, which basically includes the template avatar, which is an empty avatar, but it contains all of the parts that are required to inject the mesh that comes from the Ready Player Me server, including of course the bones and the full armature that will power the animation. But the meshes in this prefab will be completely swapped with the final ones. You see that right now they are all none, but at runtime they will be injected with the ones coming from the server. And finally, the heart of the network functionality is this string here, avatar model ID. So this avatar model ID string is the public property that we will use to synchronize the avatar over the network. You can notice that we're using the sync attribute, which is provided by Coherence. And this makes it so that when we configure the object, the property avatar model ID is already synchronized, and we don't need to go into the Coherence configuration panel to sync it. The other property that I enabled was the rotation here, and this one I did it from the UI. But the avatar model ID is synchronized because of the sync attribute. The other key functionality here is the onValueSynced attribute. OnValueSynced makes it so that when this value is synced over the network, so basically it's coming from a remote version of this prefab, it invokes the reload avatar method and it provides it with the old value and the new value. But we're only interested in the new value. So in this method, we again assign the model ID to the new value, and then we invoke the reloading of the avatar. So exactly like when the character was spawned at the beginning locally, when a character is spawned remotely and the avatar model ID property is changed, the avatar is notified and is forced to reload again. Load RPM avatar is the method where this prefab connects with the Ready Player Me servers. You can see that we basically transform the avatar model ID into another string, and this is just because the user might have typed the complete URL and we just want the ID. So you can check the functionality of this utility method, but it's doing nothing else than just trimming the string. And finally, it speaks with the Ready Player Me object. Avatar Object Loader is an object that is created here in Enable. It's provided by Ready Player Me SDK. Avatar Object Loader is the class. And we invoked a method called loadAvatar. This method, in turn, will trigger some events as a response, whether the avatar is loaded correctly or not. And we engage the listeners to those events here in the onEnable. So on avatar loaded, supposing that the loading goes well, trigger this method here. Here is where things become interesting, and you can see how simple this code is. And this is thanks to the Ready Player Me SDK. The downloaded avatar, which basically comes as part of the completion event arguments, is a game object that has been instantiated in the scene. So we take that, and then we call a utility function that Ready Player Me provides, which is called transfer mesh. Transfer mesh takes all of the meshes in this avatar and transfers them to another object that we provide, which of course is going to be the one we mentioned before, which is the reference to the template prefab that is included in our character. So basically we transfer all the meshes and the animation data from the downloaded avatar that has been instantiated in the scene to our avatar, and then finally, because we don't need the one that's instantiated in the scene, we just delete it. So we just destroy the one that was instantiated automatically. And that's it. That's all we need. In fact, you will notice that if we comment this method and we go back to Unity and we launch the game, as soon as the avatar is loaded, we will also have a copy of the one that was downloaded automatically. So this is the one that gets downloaded from the Ready Player Me SDK, and it contains all of the armature and obviously the meshes. And this is the one we transferred the mesh data into, which is the one you see moving around, and the one that's networked with Coherence. So the gist of it is that we first download the avatar with the Ready Player Me SDK automatically. This is something that they provide and they do automatically. And then we delete this one that we don't need anymore, and then we start using the one that is networked instead. And this simple trick is all that you need to synchronize an avatar over the network with Ready Player Me and make it animated and interactive, like an avatar that was just simply included in your project. A small trick we used is to leverage the onValidate function to provide the ability to change avatar at runtime. The onValidate function, if you don't know, is a method that triggers automatically in Unity whenever you change the value of a property in the Unity editor. So in this case, we're looking at the avatar model ID, and if we do change this to any other value and we press enter, this immediately triggers a reload of the avatar. So you can see that we switched avatar at runtime, and you can tie this functionality, of course, to any other function in your game, like an avatar selector, or you can give the player the ability to change their avatar at runtime. And this is simply done because whenever onValidate is invoked, if the string is not null or empty, so the new string that has come as part of the inspector change, then we just call reload avatar again, which is again the same method that we were letting Coherence call over the internet, and which eventually will invoke load RPM avatar and contact the Ready Player Me servers. So with this simple trick, as a developer here in the editor, you can actually switch avatars and test things out and see how they will look like without even having to stop the game. We hope you enjoyed this short tutorial. We suggest to try it out. You can download the demo, the link is in the description, and if you run into any blockers, you can come to the Coherence Discord or to our forums. All the links are in the description below. Have fun!